It started like any other day. An old black man walked into a restaurant. He looked tired. His clothes were old, but clean. His steps were slow. But no one paid him attention. What happened next shocked everyone, and changed many lives forever. Mr. Daniel had just reached the city that morning. He came by an old, crowded bus. The journey was long and tiring. He was in his late 60s. His back hurt. His legs were sore. But he had a smile on his face. He was excited to see his son Elijah. It had been almost a year since they met. Elijah had been busy with work. Mr. Daniel didn't want to disturb him. But now, he had come to surprise him. A small visit. Just for a few days. Mr. Daniel carried a small bag. Inside it were a few clothes, an old photo of his wife, and some letters from Elijah. He walked slowly through the streets. The city was big and noisy. Everything moved so fast. After a while, Mr. Daniel started to feel weak. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten anything since the night before. He looked around for a place to eat. Then he saw a restaurant on the corner. It looked fancy and bright. The windows were clean. The lights were warm. He stood outside for a moment, then walked in. The door made a soft bell sound. The restaurant was quiet. Only a few people were inside. The chairs were shiny. The floors were spotless. It looked expensive. Mr. Daniel didn't care about that. He just needed some food. A warm meal. He stepped forward with hope in his eyes. But what happened next was not what he expected. As Mr. Daniel walked toward the counter, he looked around. He noticed how quiet the place was. There were few people sitting and eating. Everyone looked neat and well-dressed. He felt a little out of place, but he stayed calm. He was used to being treated differently. Behind the counter stood a young woman. She was busy typing something on a screen. She looked up and saw Mr. Daniel. Her eyes moved from his face to his shoes. She didn't smile. Mr. Daniel spoke gently. "Good afternoon," he said. "Can I get something to eat, please?" The young woman didn't answer right away. She turned her head and whispered to a nearby waiter. They both looked at Mr. Daniel and chuckled. The waiter stepped closer. He didn't smile either. "Do you have a reservation?" he asked with a rude tone. Mr. Daniel shook his head. "No," he said. "I just want a meal. I can pay." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wallet. The woman looked annoyed. The waiter rolled his eyes. "Sir, this place is not for everyone," the waiter said. "You should try somewhere else." Just then, a man in a black shirt and shiny shoes walked over. He looked important. It was the manager. "What's the problem?" he asked the staff. The woman pointed at Mr. Daniel. "He walked in without a booking," she said. "He's probably lost." The manager turned to Mr. Daniel and frowned. "Sir, we don't serve walk-ins," he said coldly. "This restaurant is for members only." Mr. Daniel was confused. He looked around. There were no signs that said members only. He said politely, "I've had a long journey. I just need a simple meal. I have the money." The manager folded his arms. "It's not about money," he said. "It's about standards. Please leave." Mr. Daniel's face fell. He nodded slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't shout. He turned around and quietly walked out the door. Mr. Daniel walked out of the restaurant slowly. His hands trembled a little. His stomach still ached from hunger. But what hurt more was how they treated him. He sat down on a bench just outside the restaurant. He didn't say a word. He looked at people passing by. Some were laughing. Some were eating ice cream. Some were rushing to work. He thought about his son, Elijah. He was proud of him. Elijah was smart, kind, and hardworking. He had built a life on his own. He had told Mr. Daniel on the phone, "Dad, I finally opened my own business. It's doing well." Mr. Daniel didn't ask much. He just smiled and said, "I'm proud of you, son." Now, sitting outside, Mr. Daniel pulled out his phone. It was an old phone. The buttons were worn out. He searched for Elijah's number. He pressed call. The phone rang once, then twice. "Hello, Dad." Elijah answered, his voice full of joy. "You reached safe? Where are you now?" Mr. Daniel smiled weakly. "Yes, son. I'm near a restaurant. I stopped by a place to eat, but they didn't serve me." There was silence on the phone. Elijah's voice turned serious. "Which restaurant, Dad?" Mr. Daniel looked back. He read the sign. "Red Oak Lounge," he said. More silence. Then Elijah spoke. "Dad, that's my restaurant." Mr. Daniel was surprised. He looked again at the shiny glass windows. "This is yours?" he asked softly. "Yes, Dad," Elijah replied. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Please don't move." Mr. Daniel sat quietly on the bench. His hands were resting on his knees. He looked tired but calm. He kept thinking about what just happened. People had passed him by. No one noticed him. No one knew he was the father of the man who owned that beautiful restaurant. 5 minutes later, a black car stopped in front of the restaurant. The door opened quickly. A tall, young man in a suit stepped out. It was Elijah. He looked around and spotted his father sitting alone. "Dad," he called out. Mr. Daniel stood up slowly. He smiled at his son. Elijah rushed to him and gave him a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, Dad," he whispered. "You should never have been treated like this." Mr. Daniel patted his back gently. "It's okay, son. I didn't want to cause trouble." Elijah's face was angry now. Not at his father, but at the people inside. He held his dad's hand and said, "Come with me." Together, they walked into the restaurant. The bell above the door rang again. The same waitress looked up. Her eyes widened when she saw Elijah. The manager walked toward them, smiling. "Sir, you're back," he said cheerfully. Then he noticed Mr. Daniel standing beside him. Elijah didn't smile. He looked straight at them. "This man," Elijah said, pointing to his father, "was just kicked out of my restaurant." The manager's smile faded. The waitress looked nervous. I didn't know he was your father," she stammered. Elijah's voice was firm. "You shouldn't have to know who he is to treat him with respect." The restaurant became silent. Every staff member stopped moving. Customers looked up from their tables. Elijah turned to his dad. "Please sit here," he said, pulling out the best chair. "Today, you'll eat like a king. In your son's place." Mr. Daniel sat down at the table with his son. The staff stood frozen. Elijah's eyes were serious. He turned to the manager. "You're fired." The manager's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The waitress beside him looked shocked. Elijah's voice grew colder. "This is my family's business, and I won't stand for any disrespect. You both have lost your jobs. Now leave." The staff didn't move for a moment. Then the manager slowly turned and walked away. The waitress followed him, head down. Elijah turned to Mr. Daniel, trying to calm him. "I'm sorry, Dad. You didn't deserve that." Mr. Daniel shook his head. "It's all right, son. I've seen worse. What matters is that you're here now." He smiled gently at Elijah. "I'm proud of you, Elijah." Elijah smiled back. "I want this restaurant to be a place of kindness, Dad. Not just good food, but good people. Everyone should be treated with respect." Mr. Daniel looked at the empty chairs around them. He realized how much Elijah had changed. Not just his success, but his heart. Elijah snapped his fingers, and a waiter quickly came over. "Please bring us the best meal you have," he said. "We're celebrating today." Soon, delicious food arrived at their table. Mr. Daniel didn't know where to start. He hadn't eaten so well in years. As they ate, Elijah told his father all about his business. How he started with nothing and built everything from scratch. He spoke with passion, and Mr. Daniel listened quietly. He was proud of his son, not just for his success, but for his kindness and heart. The restaurant filled with customers again. But now it was different. The workers, new and old, treated everyone with care. They treated people with respect, just as Elijah wanted. By the end of the evening, Mr. Daniel felt full. Not just from the meal, but from the love and pride he felt for his son. He realized that Elijah's success wasn't just in his business, but in the way he treated people. And that was more than enough. After the meal, Elijah and Mr. Daniel stood up to leave. The restaurant was calm now. It felt like a different place. The air was filled with warmth and respect. As they walked out the door, Elijah turned to his father. "I'm glad you came to visit, Dad. I've missed you so much. Mr. Daniel smiled. I missed you too, son. I'm proud of the man you've become. You've built something special here. Elijah stopped walking for a moment. He looked at his father, his eyes full of gratitude. You taught me all of this, Dad. Hard work, respect, kindness, that's what matters. Mr. Daniel chuckled softly. I only showed you a little. You did all the hard work yourself. They both stood in the quiet street, looking at each other. It was a moment of peace, of understanding. They had faced challenges, but together they had overcome them. Elijah put his arm around Mr. Daniel. Let's go home, Dad. I've got a place just down the street. You can stay with me while you're in the city. Mr. Daniel nodded. That sounds wonderful, son. I'd like that very much. As they walked together down the street, side by side, Mr. Daniel felt a warmth inside. Not just from the meal, but from seeing Elijah's heart. He knew that Elijah would always stand for what was right. And that was all he ever wanted for his son. The next day, Elijah and Mr. Daniel were sitting together at Elijah's apartment. It was a small, cozy place, but it felt like home. Mr. Daniel sat in a chair by the window, watching the busy street outside. Elijah was in the kitchen, making coffee. Dad, Elijah said as he set the coffee on the table. We've got to do something about what happened at the restaurant yesterday. Mr. Daniel looked at his son. What do you mean, son? Elijah sat down beside him, his face serious. I want to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. No one should ever be treated like you were. Mr. Daniel smiled gently. You're right, son. But you've already done enough. You've made things right. Elijah shook his head. No, I haven't. I want to do more. I'm thinking of starting a training program for all my staff, teaching them about respect and kindness, not just service. Mr. Daniel's eyes lit up. That's a wonderful idea, Elijah. I also want to offer free meals to people who really need it, Elijah continued. Not just because they can't pay, but because everyone deserves to feel valued. Mr. Daniel nodded, proud of his son. You've got a big heart, son. I always knew you would make a difference. Elijah smiled and stood up. He walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a thick notebook. It's time to put everything into action, he said. He opened the notebook and showed his father. It was filled with plans and ideas, everything from staff training to charity work. Mr. Daniel looked at it, impressed. You've already thought of everything, he said with a chuckle. I can see how much you care. Elijah sat back down, his face softening. I'm doing this for you, Dad. You've always taught me to stand up for what's right, and now I want to share that with everyone who walks into my restaurant. Mr. Daniel smiled warmly, his heart full of pride. You've become a man of true strength, Elijah. Elijah looked at his father, his eyes filled with love. I learned from the best. A few days passed, and things at Elijah's restaurant began to change. The staff followed the new training program Elijah set up. They learned about respect, kindness, and how to treat everyone with dignity. Customers started to notice. One evening, a woman came into the restaurant. She looked tired, and her clothes were worn. She sat down at a corner table, glancing around nervously. The waitress, Maria, approached her with a warm smile. Hi, how can I help you? She asked kindly. The woman hesitated. I don't have enough money to pay, she said softly. I'm sorry. Maria looked at her for a moment. Then she nodded and said, Don't worry about it. You're welcome here. We'll take care of you. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Maria, surprised by her kindness. I didn't expect this, she whispered. Maria smiled again. It's okay. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. We're here to help. The woman sat back in her chair, feeling relieved. She had been going through a tough time and didn't know where to turn. Now, for the first time in a while, she felt seen. As the evening went on, Elijah noticed Maria talking to the woman. He walked over quietly and stood behind the counter, watching. His heart swelled with pride. When the meal was finished, the woman stood up. She tried to pull out some money, but Maria stopped her. Please, it's on the house, she said. The woman looked at her, amazed. Are you sure? She asked. Maria nodded. Absolutely. You deserve a meal. We want you to feel cared for." The woman smiled, a small tear rolling down her cheek. "Thank you so much." As she left the restaurant, Elijah walked over to Maria. "You did the right thing," he said, his voice full of pride. "Thank you for treating her with kindness." Maria smiled. "It's what we're supposed to do here, right? Make people feel welcome." Elijah nodded. "That's exactly it." He watched the woman leave, her steps a little lighter. He knew that every small act of kindness mattered. It was how he wanted his restaurant to be known. A place where people weren't judged by what they had, but by who they were. Weeks passed, and Elijah's restaurant became a symbol of kindness in the city. Word spread about the free meals for those in need, and how every person was treated with dignity, no matter who they were. Elijah and Mr. Daniel stood together at the entrance one evening, watching as people came and went. The restaurant was full, but it wasn't just the food that filled the place. It was the warmth, the feeling of community. Mr. Daniel smiled, his hands resting on his son's shoulder. "You've built something beautiful, Elijah. This is more than a restaurant. It's a place where people find kindness and respect." Elijah looked around, his heart swelling with pride. "I wanted to give people more than just a meal. I wanted to give them something that lasts, the feeling of being cared for." Just then, a familiar face walked in. It was the woman who had come in a few weeks ago, the one who couldn't pay. She walked up to Elijah and Mr. Daniel, holding a small bag in her hands. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice shaking. "I just wanted to thank you again for the meal. I've found a job, and I've saved up a little money. I wanted to pay you back for what you did for me." Elijah smiled gently and shook his head. "You don't need to pay us back," he said. "Just pay it forward. Help someone else when you can." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I will. I promise. You've changed my life. Thank you." As she left, Elijah turned to his father, a soft smile on his face. "Dad, that's what it's all about. Changing lives, one small act at a time." Mr. Daniel looked at him, his heart full. "You've done more than that, son. You've created a place where kindness and respect are the foundation. That's something powerful." Elijah nodded. "I learned from the best, and I'll keep making sure this place is a home for everyone." The evening went on, and the restaurant stayed busy. But now it wasn't just about filling bellies. It was about filling hearts with hope, respect, and love. As the lights in the restaurant dimmed, Elijah stood by the window, looking out at the city. He felt proud of everything he had built, but he knew this was just the beginning. There was more to be done, more lives to touch, and more kindness to spread. But for now, he was content. His father was by his side, and the restaurant was a place where everyone belonged. And that was all that mattered. The moral of the story is simple yet powerful. Kindness and respect should never have conditions. It doesn't matter where someone comes from, how they look, or how much money they have. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity. Small acts of kindness can create big changes, not only in people's lives, but also in the communities around us. By helping others without expecting anything in return, we make the world a better place. The true value of a person is not in what they have, but in how they treat others. If you enjoyed this story and the powerful message behind it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that touch your heart. Hit the like button if you believe in the power of kindness, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Join us on this journey of spreading positivity and love. Subscribe now and never miss a story that could change your perspective.